Hi, I'm Krista Morin, reading In the Cleft Joy Comes in the Mourning, Chapter 10, A Story of Hope After Tragedy, by Goodman. Life in the Valley. Our life is a short time in expectation, a time in which sadness and joy kiss each other at every moment. Henry Newman. The valley was my home in this season. I had no way of replenishing all that was being drained out of me. The German word Zerrissenheit, meaning torn to pieceshood, describes the condition of my heart, shredded to pieces with constant bad news. Zach said I needed bigger sunglasses because I cried so much. That probably would have been a good idea. Days when I cried felt good, though, like I was grieving the way I should. Crying felt pure, unhindered by other emotions like anger and bitterness. C.S. Lewis alludes to the strange comfort of grief. I almost prefer the moments of agony. These are at least clean and honest. In a twisted way, pain soothed, making memories more poignant and intimate. Pain reminded me how much I loved. 2 days after surgery, Zach's eyes were still swollen shut. Zach thought doing a few laps in the hallway might make the swelling go down, and sure enough, it worked. After several laps of the ward, little slits began to open and he could see again, meaning he would finally be able to watch Lord of the Rings. Just as he became engrossed in the movie, the therapist came in to teach him some relaxation strategies. Her unwanted interruption irritated him, but he hid it well, not wanting to hurt her feelings. She led him through different relaxation techniques, oblivious that he had one eye open watching a show. Finally, she stood up to leave, and Zach smiled with his familiar tender-heartedness and said, "You're sure good at what you do. I feel so much better now." I thought, "Buddy, are you serious? You didn't hear a single word she said." He honored her even though he counted down the moments until she left. The following day, Zach became obsessed with playing pool with Doug in the family recreation room. He would get up, play pool, and go back to the room, repeating this over and over again. It seemed unusual to me, like traits of OCD, an antidote for the swirling what-ifs going on in his head. I wondered what it was like to be in his head. His brain was trying to compensate for the cutting and growing tumor, with parts of his mind dying and other parts regenerating. It must have been a battle zone in there, and he was trying to navigate his new reality, confused and frustrated that his mind did not work like before. The sun streamed in through the hospital window, beckoning us to come out and enjoy its warmth. So Zach and I got a day pass and ventured out for a walk. He seemed unusually quiet and finally said, "Mom, I want to go back. I don't like the way I look." His words pierced my heart. We turned around and headed back, saying nothing. I sat with him on the side of his bed, looking at the deep scars in his head, thinking of the unspeakable pain he had been through, and hot tears came. Taking his hand, I reminded him that his scars were like those of Jesus. "Zach, God has chosen you, his most courageous warrior, to bring people to himself." Somehow this made sense to him. Perhaps the suffering had a redemptive purpose. I was reminded of an Anne Voskamp description of music being made in stress. As the string is pulled tight, stressed and empty and stretched right out, this is the place of song. I wondered if music would ever come from this pain. Will we ever know pure joy uncontaminated by sorrow again? I wondered. Zach's muscles and joints were sore. His body ached from all the stress it had been under. Too many pain medications, too much Decadron, too much constipation, and too much chemotherapy. His body balked at all the poison. Yet in spite of the endless invasions on his body, ever so slowly, I began to see his strength returning along with his determination and even his sense of humor. He had seemed so downtrodden a few days after surgery, and I wondered if depression might be creeping in, but his joy seemed to be on the rise, and once again, darkness was being pushed back. On the day we were released, our spirits soared at the thought of going home, seeing friends, and especially reconnecting with Carter. We could not get out of the hospital fast enough. On the drive back to Kamloops, I thought about Zach's 13th birthday coming up in 2 weeks. Memories of the past 13 years swam before me. Time had gone much too fast. Had I known I might only have 13 years, I would have cherished every second. If only time could stand still. Silently, I sat in the car as emotions choked the life out of me. We were about to celebrate what could be his last birthday. As his birthday approached, I posted on my blog that I wanted to do something incredible to commemorate Zach's entry into the teen years. Parents and kids from Zach's school came up with a plan immediately. On the day of his birthday, I dropped Zach off at school, delighted to see a little bounce in his step that was so familiar. It felt like an achingly long time since I had seen that kind of joy. It washed over me like healing water straight from heaven. Parents made sushi for his party, lots of it. This was to be his last birthday party, and the grade 7 kids did an amazing job, throwing the best shindig ever. All the kids brought Legos for him. Zach felt covered in love, and he came home beaming, knowing his friends cherished him and feeling thankful he could spend the next few days doing nothing but building Legos. Even though his spirit seemed to be high, Zach's pain began to escalate. Along with pain in his joints and muscles, he started getting excruciating pain in his stomach and jaw. We increased his pain medications and his Decadron, but even then, he could not get comfortable. The tumor on the outside grew more each day, distorting his face dramatically. I could still see my Zach, but physically, he looked nothing like he used to. His face became more and more swollen, and the baseball-sized tumor was now an open sore, needing dressing changes multiple times daily. He continued with chemotherapy and naturopathic treatments, but I knew we were losing ground. He deteriorated more and more each day. Shelley Ockenden from Nursing Support Services phoned a week after we got home from BC Children's Hospital and left a voice message explaining that she was part of the palliative care team that was to follow up with us. When I heard the message, I slammed the phone down. I had no intention of calling anyone who wanted to talk about palliative care. My son had a lot of living to do, and this phone call felt like a death sentence. I planned to fast and pray until God gave me the healing miracle I pleaded for. I still believed God was going to heal Zach, and anyone who suggested otherwise got an earful. Despite my longing for healing, Zach's cancer began to advance at a shocking rate. He regressed in age, acting more like a boy of 5 or 6 rather than a boy of 13. He wanted to hold my hand when we walked down the street like he did when he was little. Shelley suggested we read stories to him that we had read when he was small as a way of connecting. His favorite 2 stories were Hugley's Big Mess by Ted Arnold and Click Clack Moo Cows That Type by Doreen Cronin. Zach loved reminiscing over his favorite childhood stories, and our times remembering and cuddling brought healing to all of us. Carter too enjoyed these times with Zach, laughing with him over their favorite stories. Zach's personality also changed dramatically. He began talking with strange accents and seemed to struggle more with social skills. I grieved over our loss as a whole throughout our journey, but I also grieved incrementally over the day-to-day losses. Each day we lost a little bit more of the Zach we knew. In the middle of April, I knew it was time to talk with Carter and prepare him for Zach's death. My biggest nightmare could no longer be avoided. Doug and I sat on the couch with Carter and Sage one evening. My throat felt constricted and my stomach was nauseous. I opened Gentle Willow, the book I had read to the boys when Jay was dying. I hesitated before reading the words, wanting to prolong the truth a little bit longer. My eyes blurred as I began to read the first page of Gentle Willow. I kept pausing to look at Carter, afraid of what I might see in his eyes. I did not see fear, I saw unbearable sadness. As I read this story that helps explain what happens as cancer or disease progresses, none of us could hold back our tears. In this story, Gentle Willow's friends notice her bark is lumpy and bumpy and her leaves are brown and droopy. Saddened to see her deteriorating, her friends try everything to make her well, but she continues to worsen. The animals sadly realize all they can do for Gentle Willow is give her a special medicine called love. Tree sap to make her feel stronger, and herbs to help her feel comfortable. Through simple explanations, the book helped Carter and Sage come to terms with what was happening. We talked about how they could love Zach in his dying and the importance of telling him all they wanted to tell him. The next day, Carter wanted to stop by the Christian bookstore on our way back from longboarding. He made a beeline for the willow tree sculptures. These sculptures capture moments in time and express love, closeness, healing, courage, and hope. Carter chose to buy 2 willow tree sculptures, one of a little boy sitting down with his hand on his chin, and one of a little boy holding a puppy. He wanted both of them, saying the first represented Zach and the second him. Zach's sculpture was titled, "Quiet Strength, Always There for Me." And Carter's sculpture was titled, "Above All, Kindness." Carter wanted something concrete to show how death could not destroy the union between he and his brother. A few nights later, I found Carter and Zach sharing chocolate chip cookies on his bed, both teary-eyed. I was not allowed in on their intimate conversation, but I knew they were making sure nothing was left unsaid. Day in and day out, we had prayed for a miracle, only to find our prayers had landed on seemingly deaf ears. God had let me down. It seemed miracles were not in store for our family. I knew I had to make the dreaded call to Shelley. We arranged a time to get together and met for the first time in our living room. Shelley's loving, emotionally present way of handling our situation felt reassuring. She met us in our darkest hour without being afraid of our raw emotions. She introduced herself to our family, and with openness and vulnerability, she began to ask the hard questions. I felt strongly that Zach needed to be involved in a conversation about the palliative care. And with the biggest ache in my heart I had ever known, I asked him if he wanted to be part of our discussion. Courageously, he said yes. We promised him we were going to do everything we could to make sure he did not suffer and to make sure he died peacefully. I reminded him about how his dad had reached toward heaven during his last hours, probably reaching to the angels that would take him home. Zach liked that thought. He emphatically said he did not want to go to a hospital. He wanted to die at home. I assured him that I would do everything in my power to make sure that his request was honored. The not knowing was what scared Zach the most, but braving the dark places seemed to usher in the light. Once Zach knew the plan and embraced his freedom to choose how he wanted to live during his dying, he relaxed into the next stage of his life. I remembered how afraid he had been at 5 years of age when his dad had been dying. I sat him down and I said, "Honey, Daddy is dying, and it is going to happen really soon, probably before you go into kindergarten." I'd seen peace wash over him because this news got rid of the unknown. He found something to sink his teeth into. Similarly, he left the meeting with Shelley in control of the care process in his remaining days, and it helped alleviate his fear. Palliative care can be difficult to navigate, but Shelley led us through, so our time could be freed to love rather than figure out all the paperwork and nitty-gritty details of the medical system. We trusted her completely. She dropped all the professional jargon, hugging us, laughing with us, and playing with us. I knew Doug and I would not be able to manage all of Zach's care at home by ourselves, so I phoned Margie to see if she would come and be his at-home nurse. She responded without hesitation that she would come and stay with him until the end. With her nursing background in the ER, she would be perfectly qualified to do everything. Also, Zach and his auntie had a really special bond. They had spent many of his early years together. She had packed him on hiking trips, loved him when he fell and hurt himself, encouraged him when he was sad, and made him laugh with her endless silliness. There were 2 peas in a pod. I knew Zach would be comfortable with Margie at his side, and she would know just what to do when he was afraid. Margie loved without limits. She gave up her income to come and be with us. She put dressings on Zach's tumor, combed his hair to comfort him as she was giving him a needle, flawlessly delivered his pain meds, and told him funny stories to make him laugh. Zach's favorite way to pass time with Margie was by watching James Bond movies. Margie was aware of Zach's every need and perfectly balanced his medications. She came with us to doctor's appointments, stepped in the breach if she thought something was not right, advocated for a family, phoned children's hospice in the middle of the night if she was not sure about something in particular, and sacrificially gave 100% of herself not only to Zach, but to all of us. Margie reached up to heaven and brought down compassion and dedication, allowing Zach's final wish of dying at home to be a reality. My confidence in Margie's ability to care for Zach's medical needs freed me to be Zach's mom. The burden of figuring everything out was lifted, so I could savor my last days with Zach.